Salt and sodium. Salt, also known as sodium chloride, is about 40% sodium and 60% chloride. It flavors food and is used as a binder and stabilizer. It is also a food preservative, as bacteria can't thrive in the presence of a high amount of salt. The human body requires a small amount of sodium to conduct nerve impulses, contract and relax muscles, and maintain the proper balance of water and minerals. It is estimated that we need about 500 milligrams of sodium daily for these vital functions. But too much sodium in the diet can lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. It can also cause calcium losses, some of which may be pulled from bone. Most Americans consume at least 1.5 teaspoons of salt per day, or about 3,400 milligrams of sodium, which contains far more than our bodies need. Recommended amounts. The U.S. dietary reference intakes state that there is not enough evidence to establish a recommended dietary allowance or a toxic level for sodium, aside from chronic disease risk. Because of this, a tolerable upper intake level, UL, has not been established. A UL is the maximum daily intake unlikely to cause harmful effects on health. Guidelines for adequate intakes, AI, of sodium were established based on the lowest levels of sodium intake used in randomized controlled trials that did not show a deficiency but that also allowed for an adequate intake of nutritious foods naturally containing sodium. For men and women 14 years of age and older and pregnant women, the AI is 1,500 milligrams a day. A chronic disease risk reduction, CDRR, intake has also been established, based on the evidence of benefit of a reduced sodium intake on the risk of cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure. Reducing sodium intakes below the CDRR is expected to lower the risk of chronic disease in the general healthy population. The CDRR lists 2,300 milligrams a day as the maximum amount to consume for chronic disease reduction for men and women 14 years of age and older and pregnant women. Most people in the U.S. consume more sodium than the AI or CDRR guidelines. 1. Types of salt. Finely ground salts are dense, so they tend to contain more sodium than coarser salts. Note that sodium content can vary widely among brands, so check the nutrition facts label for exact amounts. The inclusion of brand names on this list is for reference only and does not constitute an endorsement. The nutrition source does not endorse specific brands. Sodium and health. In most people, the kidneys have trouble keeping up with excess sodium in the blood. As sodium accumulates, the body holds onto water to dilute the sodium. This increases both the amount of fluid surrounding cells and the volume of blood in the bloodstream. Increased blood volume means more work for the heart and more pressure on blood vessels. Over time, the extra work and pressure can stiffen blood vessels, leading to high blood pressure, heart attack, and stroke. It can also lead to heart failure. There is some evidence that too much salt can damage the heart, aorta, and kidneys without increasing blood pressure, and that it may be bad for bones, too. Learn more about the health risks and disease related to salt and sodium. Food sources. Sodium isn't generally a nutrient that you need to look for, it finds you. Almost any unprocessed food like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, meats, and dairy foods is low in sodium. Most of the salt in our diets comes from commercially prepared foods, not from salt added to cooking at home or even from salt added at the table before eating. 1.18. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the top 10 sources of sodium in our diets include bread/rolls, pizza, sandwiches, cold cuts/cured meats, soups, burritos, tacos, savory snacks, chips, popcorn, pretzels, crackers, chicken, cheese, eggs, omelets. Are natural salts healthier than table salt? Salt is harvested from salt mines or by evaporating ocean water. All types of salt are made of sodium chloride, and the nutrient content varies minimally. Although less processed salts contain small amounts of minerals, the amount is not enough to offer substantial nutritional benefit. Different salts are chosen mainly for flavor. Shaker of table salt. The most widely used, table salt, is extracted from underground salt deposits. It is heavily processed to remove impurities, which may also remove trace minerals. It is then ground very fine. Iodine, a trace mineral, was added to salt in 1924 to prevent goiter and hypothyroidism, medical conditions caused by iodine deficiency. Table salt also often contains an anti-caking agent such as calcium silicate to prevent clumps from forming. Kosher salt is a coarsely grained salt named for its use in traditional kosher food preparation. Kosher salt does not typically contain iodine but may have an anti-caking agent. Sea salt is produced by evaporating ocean or sea water. It is also composed mostly of sodium chloride, but sometimes contains small amounts of minerals like potassium, zinc, and iron depending on where it was harvested. Because it is not highly refined and ground like table salt, it may appear coarser and darker with an uneven color, indicating the remaining impurities and nutrients. Unfortunately, some of these impurities can contain metals found in the ocean, like lead. The coarseness and granule size will vary by brand. Small glass bowl of Himalayan pink salt. Himalayan pink salt is harvested from mines in Pakistan. Its pink hue comes from small amounts of iron oxide. Similar to sea salt, it is less processed and refined, and therefore the crystals appear larger and contain small amounts of minerals including iron, calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Larger, coarser salt granules do not dissolve as easily or evenly in cooking, but offer a burst of flavor. They are best used sprinkled onto meats and vegetables before cooking or immediately after. They should not be used in baking recipes. Keep in mind that measurements of different salts are not always interchangeable in recipes. Generally, sea salt and table salt can be interchanged if the granule size is similar. However, table salt tends to have more concentrated, salter flavor than kosher salt, so the substitution is 1 teaspoon of table salt for about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of kosher salt depending on the brand. Signs of deficiency and toxicity. Deficiency. A deficiency of sodium in the U.S. is rare because it is so commonly added to a wide variety of foods and occurs naturally in some foods. Hyponatremia is the term used to describe abnormally low amounts of sodium in the blood. This occurs mainly in older adults, particularly those living in long-term care facilities or hospitals who take medications or have health conditions that deplete the body of sodium, leading to hyponatremia. Excess vomiting, diarrhea, and sweating can also cause hyponatremia if salt is lost in these fluids that are expelled from the body. Sometimes too much fluid abnormally collecting in the body can lead to hyponatremia, which might stem from diseases such as heart failure or liver cirrhosis. In rare cases, simply drinking too much fluid can lead to hyponatremia if the kidneys can't excrete the excess water. Symptoms of hyponatremia can include nausea, vomiting, headaches, altered mental state/confusion, lethargy, seizures, coma. Toxicity. Too much sodium in the blood is called hypernatremia. This acute condition can happen in older adults who are mentally and physically impaired, who do not eat or drink enough, or who are sick with a high fever, vomiting, or infection that causes severe dehydration. Excessive sweating or diuretic medications that deplete the body of water are other causes. When sodium accumulates in the blood, water is transferred out of cells and into the blood to dilute it. This fluid shift and a buildup of fluid in the brain can cause seizures, coma, or even death. Extra fluid collecting in the lungs can cause difficulty breathing. Other symptoms of hypernatremia can include nausea, vomiting, weakness, loss of appetite, intense thirst, confusion, kidney damage. The interplay of sodium and potassium. Sodium and potassium are closely interconnected but have opposite effects in the body. Both are essential nutrients that play key roles in maintaining physiological balance, and both have been linked to the risk of chronic diseases, especially cardiovascular disease. High salt intake increases blood pressure, which can lead to heart disease, while high potassium intake can help relax blood vessels and excrete sodium while decreasing blood pressure. Our bodies need far more potassium than sodium each day, but the typical U.S. diet is just the opposite. Americans average about 3,300 milligrams of sodium per day, about 75% of which comes from processed foods, while only getting about 2,900 milligrams of potassium each day. 1920. A study in the Archives of Internal Medicine found that people who ate high sodium, low potassium diets had a higher risk of dying from a heart attack or any cause. In this study, people with the highest sodium intakes had a 20% higher risk of death from any cause than people with the lowest sodium intakes. People with the highest potassium intakes had a 20% lower risk of dying than people with the lowest intakes. But what may be even more important for health is the relationship of sodium to potassium in the diet. People with the highest ratio of sodium to potassium in their diets had double the risk of dying of a heart attack than people with the lowest ratio, and they had a 50% higher risk of death from any cause. 21. People can make a key dietary change to help lower their risk. Eat more fresh vegetables and fruits, which are naturally high in potassium and low in sodium, but eat less bread, cheese, processed meat, and other processed foods that are high in sodium and low in potassium. Take action. How to reduce your sodium intake. Woman adding salt to pot. Start early. High blood pressure can start developing in childhood, and becoming conditioned to high salt tastes early in life can make it more difficult to cut back later. Childhood is an important time to focus on preventing the development of high blood pressure, but cutting back on salt and sodium can have a significant impact for people of all ages. Cut back on prepared foods. About 70% of the sodium Americans eat comes from processed, prepared foods such as crackers, cheese, and canned foods, and restaurant meals. 1. Even processed foods that don't taste salty, like breakfast cereal, can have surprisingly high sodium levels. Additionally, foods consumed numerous times a day, such as bread, can add up to higher sodium intake even though an individual serving is not high in sodium. Pepperoni and cheese pizza. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, top sources of sodium in the American diet include breads and rolls, cold cuts and cured meats, pizza, fresh and processed chicken, soups, sandwiches, cheese, egg dishes, and packaged savory snacks. Prepared sauces, salad dressings, and gravies also tend to be high in sodium. Choosing foods with lower sodium doesn't mean losing flavor. Human taste buds aren't sensitive enough to notice a minor reduction in salt of about 30%, and for many types of foods, salt reductions of up to 30% won't taste noticeably different. This means that home cooks, professional chefs, and the food industry can make significant sodium reductions with minimal impact on flavor. Eat smaller portions of salty foods. There's no need to completely eliminate favorite high-sodium foods or traditional cultural cuisines such as soy sauce, China, salted pickles and fish, Japan, or salty cheese and olives, Greece, Italy. Instead, it's best to enjoy such foods in smaller amounts. Discover reduced or no-sodium alternatives. Salt substitutes, including herbs and spices, and citrus like lemon can provide more flavor with less sodium. For example, citrus and sodium activate the same taste sensors so that less sodium can be used when they are combined. Explore your supermarket for low-sodium versions of traditional high-salt products, or experiment with new alternatives. Bottle of soy sauce. The Food and Drug Administration requires a low-sodium labeled food to contain less than 140 milligrams per serving. However, in foods where salt is a key component, such as soy sauce or cold cuts, the best a manufacturer can do is reduce the amount. In this case, the label can say less sodium or lower sodium, although it may still be a high-sodium food. For example, 1 tablespoon of less sodium soy sauce contains about 550 milligrams, as compared with 1,000 milligrams in the regular version. 1 serving of lower sodium deli turkey breast contains about 380 milligrams, not much different from 450 milligrams in regular deli sliced turkey. Public health concerns, salt and sodium. Burden on public health and healthcare spending. 9 out of 10 U.S. men and women will develop hypertension at some point in their lives. 1. This epidemic places a huge burden on the healthcare system and on our economy, estimated at $73.4 billion in direct and indirect costs for 2009 alone. 2. Researchers estimate that reducing the average daily sodium intake in the U.S. to 2,300 milligrams, about 1 teaspoon of salt, per day would prevent 11 million cases of hypertension and would save $18 billion in healthcare costs each year. 3. Another study estimates that cutting average daily sodium consumption by 1,200 milligrams, about 1/2 teaspoon of salt, would prevent up to 99,000 heart attacks and 66,000 strokes, and would save up to 92,000 lives a year. Researchers also estimated that such sodium reductions would save $24 billion in health costs. 4. Smaller cutbacks would also save lives and be cost-effective, and this is true for developed countries as well, where excess salt is an even greater problem, could have a more substantial impact. Many players in the food industry have already taken the lead in reducing sodium, but broad-scale sodium reduction may also require action from the government and political sectors. Regulating the amount of salt in prepared foods. Given that processed foods contribute to a large portion of people's sodium intake in the US and Europe, governments have started working with the food industry to lower sodium levels. US initiatives. Currently, there is no limit on the amount of sodium allowed in foods, because salt has long been considered to be generally recognized as safe, or GRA, a regulatory designation called into question by 40 years of research on the hazards of eating too much salt. A committee appointed by the Institute of Medicine recommended that the Federal Food and Drug Administration, FDA, regulate the amount of salt in commercially prepared food. The committee's report, Strategies to Reduce Sodium Intake in the United States, released on April 20, 2010, urges the FDA to work with food companies to ratchet back the amount of salt consumed by Americans, 75% of which comes from commercially prepared foods. 5. The IOM is not recommending a ban on salt. It is, after all, an essential part of the human diet, nor immediate changes. What the IOM report calls for is a gradual reduction in salt that would make the changes imperceptible to consumers' palates. This would entail having the FDA work with the food industry to set limits on the amount of salt in prepared food, with the limit lowering over time. The Washington Post quoted sources at the FDA saying that it could take 10 years to phase in these changes. Involving the FDA would help create and maintain a level playing field for food companies, says Dr. Walter Willett, Frederick John Stare Professor of Epidemiology and Nutrition and Chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health. Salt is such an inexpensive ingredient that, if sodium limits were voluntary, it would be easy for food companies to make products stand out by boosting their salt content compared to those who were voluntarily reducing salt. Regulation by the FDA would make such end runs difficult and protect the responsible companies that are reducing the sodium content of their products, says Dr. Willett. 2021 update, FDA releases voluntary sodium reduction goals. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, released new voluntary guidance on October 13, 2021, encouraging the food industry to gradually reduce sodium in commercially processed, packaged, and prepared foods over the next 2.5 years, with the aim of helping Americans reduce their average levels of sodium from 3,400 to 3,000 milligrams per day. Frank Sachs, professor of cardiovascular disease prevention at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, was the principal investigator in the landmark Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, SODIUM trial, which rigorously examined the effect of sodium intake on blood pressure, concluding that the relation is strong and causal. He recently spoke about the new FDA guidance and offered tips for eating a lower sodium diet without sacrificing taste. Other key recommendations include the following. Updating food labels to match a daily value for sodium of 1,500 milligrams a day, instead of 2,300 milligrams. This would help consumers have a better idea of the level of salt in their foods, and manufacturers would have more of an incentive to cut back on the amount of salt in their products. Launching a nationwide campaign to help consumers change their salt consumption habits. Industry cutbacks in salt will help lower everyone's sodium intake, but consumers also need to do their part by choosing healthful foods. Although the recommendations come from the highly regarded Institute of Medicine, an independent, nonprofit organization that provides evidence-based information and advice to the federal government and the public on matters of diet, health, and healthcare, there is no guarantee that they will be put into practice. The salt industry has long resisted outside intervention and continues to argue that salt has little influence on blood pressure. New York City. Encouragingly, some manufacturers have voluntarily agreed to cut back on sodium as part of New York City's National Salt Reduction Initiative. 6. The aim of this initiative is to guide a voluntary reduction of salt levels in packaged and restaurant foods, with the primary goal of cutting the salt in packaged and restaurant foods by 25% over 5 years, which would reduce the nation's salt intake by 20% and prevent thousands of deaths. International initiatives. Finland and the United Kingdom have led successful sodium reduction efforts. 7. In Finland, a government-led program of education, salt labeling legislation, and pressure on the food industry has led to a 30% reduction in salt intake, from 12,000 milligrams a day to around 9,000 milligrams today. In the United Kingdom, a partnership between a scientific action group called Consensus Action on Salt and Health, CASH, and the UK Department of Health has led to a 20 to 30% reduction in the salt content of processed foods bought in supermarkets. 7. Carbohydrates, quality matters. What's most important is the type of carbohydrate you choose to eat, because some sources are healthier than others. The amount of carbohydrate in the diet, high or low, is less important than the type of carbohydrate in the diet. For example, healthy, whole grains such as whole wheat bread, rye, barley and quinoa are better choices than highly refined white bread or French fries. 1. Many people are confused about carbohydrates, but keep in mind that it's more important to eat carbohydrates from healthy foods than to follow a strict diet limiting or counting the number of grams of carbohydrates consumed. What are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are found in a wide array of both healthy and unhealthy foods: bread, beans, milk, popcorn, potatoes, cookies, spaghetti, soft drinks, corn, and cherry pie. They also come in a variety of forms. The most common and abundant forms are sugars, fibers, and starches. Foods high in carbohydrates are an important part of a healthy diet. Carbohydrates provide the body with glucose, which is converted to energy used to support bodily functions and physical activity. But carbohydrate quality is important. Some types of carbohydrate-rich foods are better than others. The healthiest sources of carbohydrates: unprocessed or minimally processed whole grains, vegetables, fruits and beans promote good health by delivering vitamins, minerals, fiber, and a host of important phytonutrients. Unhealthier sources of carbohydrates include white bread, pastries, sodas, and other highly processed or refined foods. These items contain easily digested carbohydrates that may contribute to weight gain, interfere with weight loss, and promote diabetes and heart disease. The Healthy Eating Plate recommends filling most of your plate with healthy carbohydrates, with vegetables, except potatoes, and fruits taking up about half of your plate, and whole grains filling up about 1/4 of your plate. Try these tips for adding healthy carbohydrates to your diet. 1. Start the day with whole grains. Try a hot cereal, like steel-cut or old-fashioned oats, not instant oatmeal, or a cold cereal that lists a whole grain first on the ingredient list and is low in sugar. A good rule of thumb: choose a cereal that has at least 4 grams of fiber and less than 8 grams of sugar per serving. 2. Use whole grain breads for lunch or snacks. Confused about how to find a whole grain bread? Look for bread that lists as the first ingredient whole wheat, whole rye, or some other whole grain, and even better, one that is made with only whole grains, such as 100% whole wheat bread. 3. Also look beyond the bread aisle. Whole wheat bread is often made with finely ground flour, and bread products are often high in sodium. Instead of bread, try a whole grain in salad form such as brown rice or quinoa. 4. Choose whole fruit instead of juice. An orange has 2 times as much fiber and half as much sugar as a 12-ounce glass of orange juice. 5. Pass on potatoes, and instead bring on the beans. Rather than fill up on potatoes, which have been found to promote weight gain, choose beans for an excellent source of slowly digested carbohydrates. Beans and other legumes such as chickpeas also provide a healthy dose of protein, carbohydrates and blood sugar. When people eat a food containing carbohydrates, the digestive system breaks down the digestible ones into sugar, which enters the blood. As blood sugar levels rise, the pancreas produces insulin, a hormone that prompts cells to absorb blood sugar for energy or storage. As cells absorb blood sugar, levels in the bloodstream begin to fall. When this happens, the pancreas starts making glucagon, a hormone that signals the liver to start releasing stored sugar. This interplay of insulin and glucagon ensure that cells throughout the body, and especially in the brain, have a steady supply of blood sugar. Carbohydrate metabolism is important in the development of type 2 diabetes, which occurs when the body can't make enough insulin or can't properly use the insulin it makes. Type 2 diabetes usually develops gradually over a number of years, beginning when muscle and other cells stop responding to insulin. This condition, known as insulin resistance, causes blood sugar and insulin levels to stay high long after eating. Over time, the heavy demands made on the insulin-making cells wears them out, and insulin production eventually stops. Glycemic index. In the past, carbohydrates were commonly classified as being either simple or complex, and described as follows. Simple carbohydrates. These carbohydrates are composed of sugars, such as fructose and glucose, which have simple chemical structures composed of only one sugar, monosaccharides, or 2 sugars, disaccharides. Simple carbohydrates are easily and quickly utilized for energy by the body because of their simple chemical structure, often leading to a faster rise in blood sugar and insulin secretion from the pancreas, which can have negative health effects. Complex carbohydrates. These carbohydrates have more complex chemical structures, with 3 or more sugars linked together, known as oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. Many complex carbohydrate foods contain fiber, vitamins and minerals, and they take longer to digest, which means they have less of an immediate impact on blood sugar, causing it to rise more slowly. But other so-called complex carbohydrate foods such as white bread and white potatoes contain mostly starch but little fiber or other beneficial nutrients. Dividing carbohydrates into simple and complex, however, does not account for the effect of carbohydrates on blood sugar and chronic diseases. To explain how different kinds of carbohydrate-rich foods directly affect blood sugar, the glycemic index was developed and is considered a better way of categorizing carbohydrates, especially starchy foods. The glycemic index ranks carbohydrates on a scale from 0 to 100 based on how quickly and how much they raise blood sugar levels after eating. Foods with a high glycemic index, like white bread, are rapidly digested and cause substantial fluctuations in blood sugar. Foods with a low glycemic index, like whole oats, are digested more slowly, prompting a more gradual rise in blood sugar. Low glycemic foods have a rating of 55 or less, and foods rated 70 to 100 are considered high glycemic foods. Medium-level foods have a glycemic index of 56 to 69. Eating many high glycemic index foods, which cause powerful spikes in blood sugar, can lead to an increased risk for type 2 diabetes, 2, heart disease, 3, 4, and overweight, 5, 6, 7. There is also preliminary work linking high glycemic diets to age-related macular degeneration, 8, ovulatory infertility, 9, and colorectal cancer. 10. Foods with a low glycemic index have been shown to help control type 2 diabetes and improve weight loss. A 2014 review of studies researching carbohydrate quality and chronic disease risk showed that low glycemic index diets may offer anti-inflammatory benefits. 16. The University of Sydney in Australia maintains a searchable database of foods and their corresponding glycemic indices. Many factors can affect a food's glycemic index, including the following. Processing: grains that have been milled and refined, removing the bran and the germ, have a higher glycemic index than minimally processed whole grains. Physical form: finely ground grain is more rapidly digested than coarsely ground grain. This is why eating whole grains in their whole form like brown rice or oats can be healthier than eating highly processed whole grain bread. Fiber content: high fiber foods don't contain as much digestible carbohydrate, so it slows the rate of digestion and causes a more gradual and lower rise in blood sugar. 17. Ripeness: ripe fruits and vegetables tend to have a higher glycemic index than unripened fruit. Fat content and acid content: meals with fat or acid are converted more slowly into sugar. Numerous epidemiologic studies have shown a positive association between higher dietary glycemic index and increased risk of type 2 diabetes and coronary heart disease. However, the relationship between glycemic index and body weight is less well studied and remains controversial. Glycemic load: one thing that a food's glycemic index does not tell us is how much digestible carbohydrate, the total amount of carbohydrates excluding fiber, it delivers. That's why researchers developed a related way to classify foods that takes into account both the amount of carbohydrate in the food in relation to its impact on blood sugar levels. This measure is called the glycemic load. 11-12. A food's glycemic load is determined by multiplying its glycemic index by the amount of carbohydrate the food contains. In general, a glycemic load of 20 or more is high, 11-19 is medium, and 10 or under is low. The glycemic load has been used to study whether or not high glycemic load diets are associated with increased risks for type 2 diabetes risk and cardiac events. In a large meta-analysis of 24 prospective cohort studies, researchers concluded that people who consumed lower glycemic load diets were at a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes than those who ate a diet of higher glycemic load foods. 13. A similar type of meta-analysis concluded that higher glycemic load diets were also associated with an increased risk for coronary heart disease events. 14. Here is a listing of low, medium, and high glycemic load foods. For good health, choose foods that have a low or medium glycemic load, and limit foods that have a high glycemic load. Low glycemic load, 10 or under. Bran cereals: apple, orange, kidney beans, black beans, lentils, wheat tortilla, skim milk, cashews, peanuts, carrots. Medium glycemic load, 11-19. Pearled barley, 1 cup cooked. Brown rice, 3/4 cup cooked. Oatmeal, 1 cup cooked. Bulgur, 3/4 cup cooked. Rice cakes, 3 cakes. Whole grain breads, 1 slice. Whole grain pasta, 1¼ cup cooked. High glycemic load, 20 plus. Baked potato. French fries. Refined breakfast cereal, 1 ounce. Sugar-sweetened beverages, 12 ounces. Candy bars, 1 2-ounce bar or 3 mini bars. Couscous, 1 cup cooked. White basmati rice, 1 cup cooked. White flour pasta, 1¼ cup cooked, 15. Here's a list of the glycemic index and glycemic load for the most common foods. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate that the body can't digest. Though most carbohydrates are broken down into sugar molecules called glucose, fiber cannot be broken down into sugar molecules, and instead it passes through the body undigested. Fiber helps regulate the body's use of sugars, helping to keep hunger and blood sugar in check. Children and adults need at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day for good health, but most Americans get only about 15 grams a day. Great sources are whole grains, whole fruits and vegetables, legumes, and nuts. Types of fiber. Fiber comes in 2 varieties, both beneficial to health. Soluble fiber, which dissolves in water, can help lower glucose levels as well as help lower blood cholesterol. Foods with soluble fiber include oatmeal, chia seeds, nuts, beans, lentils, apples, and blueberries. Insoluble fiber, which does not dissolve in water, can help food move through your digestive system, promoting regularity and helping prevent constipation. Foods with insoluble fibers include whole wheat products, especially wheat bran, quinoa, brown rice, legumes, leafy greens like kale, almonds, walnuts, seeds, and fruits with edible skins like pears and apples. Further defining fiber. Under the umbrella terms of insoluble and soluble fibers, you may see fiber described in other ways. It can be viscous with a gel-like quality, or fermentable because it acts as food for gut bacteria that break down and ferment it. Fibers that are not broken down by bacteria, called non-fermentable, travel intact to the colon and can add bulk and weight to stool so it is easier to pass. These properties offer health benefits such as slowing down digestion, delaying blood sugar rises after meals, promoting healthy colonies of bacteria, or having a laxative effect. In addition, there are many subtypes of soluble and insoluble fibers, some of which occur naturally in plant foods and others that are synthetically made. The National Academy of Medicine defines fiber as 1. Dietary fibers, non-digestible carbohydrates and lignans, that occur naturally in plants, and 2. Functional fibers that are extracted from plants or synthetically made and are non-digestible with a beneficial health effect in humans. 1. Some types of fiber fall into both categories, such as oligosaccharides and resistant starches that may be naturally occurring or synthetically made. Naturally occurring plant fibers. Cellulose, hemicellulose, insoluble fiber found in cereal grains and the cell walls of many fruits and vegetables. It absorbs water and adds bulk to stool, which can have a laxative effect. Lignans, insoluble fiber found in wheat and corn bran, nuts, flax seeds, vegetables, and unripe bananas that triggers mucus secretion in the colon and adds bulk to stools. Has laxative effect. Beta-glucans, soluble highly fermentable fiber found in oats and barley that is metabolized and fermented in the small intestine. Acts as a prebiotic. Can add bulk to stool but does not have a laxative effect. May help to normalize blood glucose and cholesterol levels. Guar gum, soluble fermentable fiber isolated from seeds. Has a viscous gel texture and is often added to foods as a thickener. It is metabolized and fermented in the small intestine. Does not have a laxative effect. May help to normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Inulin, oligofructose, oligosaccharides, fructooligosaccharides, soluble fermentable fibers found in onions, chicory root, asparagus, and Jerusalem artichokes. May help to bulk stool with a laxative effect, normalize blood glucose, and act as a prebiotic. People with irritable bowel syndrome may be sensitive to these fibers that can cause bloating or stomach upset. Pectins, soluble highly fermentable fiber found in apples, berries, and other fruits. Minimal bulking or laxative effect. Due to its gelling properties, it may slow digestion and help normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Resistant starch, soluble fermentable fiber found in legumes, unripe bananas, cooked and cooled pasta, and potatoes that acts as a prebiotic. Adds bulk to stools but has minimal laxative effect. May help to normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Manufactured functional fibers, some of which are extracted and modified from natural plants. Psyllium, soluble viscous non-fermentable fiber extracted from psyllium seeds that holds onto water and softens and bulks stools. Has laxative effect and is an ingredient in over-the-counter laxatives and high-fiber cereals. May help to normalize blood sugar and cholesterol levels. Polydextrose and polyols, soluble fiber made of glucose and sorbitol, a sugar alcohol. It can increase stool bulk and have a mild laxative effect. Minimal effect on blood sugar or cholesterol levels. It is a food additive used as a sweetener, to improve texture, maintain moisture, or to increase fiber content. Inulin, oligosaccharides, pectins, resistant starch, gums, soluble fibers derived from plant foods as listed above, but are isolated or modified into a concentrated form that is added to foods or fiber supplements. Fiber and disease. Fiber appears to lower the risk of developing various conditions, including heart disease, diabetes, diverticular disease, and constipation. Fiber's beneficial role in the gut microbiome may produce anti-inflammatory effects that alleviate the chronic inflammation associated with these conditions. 2. Heart disease. Type 2 diabetes, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, constipation, diverticular disease. A person picking up an almond from a plate with nuts and berries. Should I avoid nuts and seeds with diverticulosis? If you have diverticulosis, chances are you've heard that maybe you should avoid certain foods with small hard-to-digest particles, nuts, seeds, popcorn, corn, and fruits and vegetables with seeds like raspberries, strawberries, cucumber, or tomatoes. The reasoning is that these small undigested food particles might become trapped in the diverticular pouches and become inflamed from bacterial infection, causing the uncomfortable condition called diverticulitis. People who have experienced intense symptoms of diverticulitis often change their diets to avoid these foods in hopes of preventing a recurrence. However, evidence has shown this practice to be more of an urban legend than helping to reduce recurrences, and can deter people from eating foods that may actually help their condition in the future. Although the role of diet with diverticular disease has long been debated, a high-fiber intake with a focus on whole grains, fruits, and vegetables has been found to have a strong association with decreased risk of diverticular disease and diverticulitis. 18. When it comes to nuts and popcorn, research following more than 47,000 men from the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study actually found a lower risk of diverticulitis when eating these foods. 25. Including these foods also did not increase the risk of developing new diverticulosis or diverticular complications. Bottom line. There are many types of dietary fibers that come from a range of plant foods. It's important to not hyperfocus on a particular fiber because of its specific proposed action, as each type offers some level of health benefit. Therefore, eating a wide variety of plant foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds to reach the fiber recommendation of 25 to 35 grams daily best ensures reaping those benefits. Some tips for increasing fiber intake. Eat whole fruits instead of drinking fruit juices. Replace white rice, bread, and pasta with minimally processed brown rice and other whole grains like barley, millet, amaranth, farro, and add high-fiber foods to current meals, 1 to 2 tablespoons of almonds, ground flax seeds, or chia seeds to cereals, diced vegetables to casseroles, stir-fried dishes, and soups. For breakfast, choose cereals that have a whole grain as their first ingredient. Another tip is to look on the nutrition facts label and choose cereals with 20% or higher of the daily value, DV, for fiber. Snack on crunchy raw vegetables or a handful of almonds instead of chips and crackers. Substitute beans or legumes for meat 2 to 3 times a week in chili and soups. If it is difficult to eat enough fiber through food, a fiber supplement such as psyllium or methylcellulose powders or wafers can be used. They can help bulk and soften stool so it is easier to pass. However, fiber supplements are not intended to completely replace high-fiber foods. Your body doesn't need to get any carbohydrate from added sugar. That's why the healthy eating pyramid says sugary drinks and sweets should be used sparingly, if at all, and the healthy eating plate does not include foods with added sugars. Spoonful of sugar. 4 grams of sugar equals 1 teaspoon. Keep this tip in mind when reading nutrition labels to better visualize just how much added sugar the product contains. For example, 1 12-ounce can of cola contains 39 grams, almost 10 teaspoons of sugar. The average American adult, teenager, and child consumes about 17 teaspoons of added sugar a day, or about 270 calories. 1. While we sometimes add sugar or sweeteners like honey to food or beverages, most added sugar comes from processed and prepared foods. The leading sources of added sugars in the U.S. diet are sugar-sweetened beverages, desserts, and sweet snacks like ice cream, pastries, and cookies. 1. Less obvious yet significant contributors are breakfast cereals and yogurt. The Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2020 to 2025 advise that all Americans 2 years and older limit added sugars in the diet to less than 10% of total calories. For a 2,000 calorie/day diet, that translates into 200 calories or 50 grams of sugar daily, about 12 teaspoons of sugar. Toddlers and infants younger than 2 years should not be given solids or beverages with any added sugars. 1. The American Heart Association, AHA, recommends that Americans drastically cut back on added sugar to help slow the obesity and heart disease epidemics. 2. The AHA suggests a stricter added sugar limit of no more than 100 calories per day, about 6 teaspoons or 24 grams, for most adult women and no more than 150 calories per day, about 9 teaspoons or 36 grams of sugar, for most men. The AHA also recommends a lower daily limit of added sugars for children ages 2 to 18 to less than 6 teaspoons or 24 grams per day, and sugary beverages should be limited to no more than 8 ounces a week. 3. For more info, visit Healthy Kids Sweet Enough Without Added Sugars. Spotting sugar on a food label. Spotting added sugars in processed foods is easier since the rollout of the updated nutrition facts label. Previously, food and beverage manufacturers in the U.S. were required to list a product's total amount of sugar per serving on the label, but did not need to disclose how much of that was from added sugars versus naturally occurring. This was confusing for foods such as plain unsweetened milk or yogurt that listed 12 grams or more of sugars, but all of which was naturally occurring lactose sugar. Lactose does not impact blood glucose or carry the same health risks as white table sugar and other caloric sweeteners. The updated nutrition facts label now lists both total sugars and underneath added sugars. The percent daily value, DV, for added sugars is based on the recommended limit from the Dietary Guidelines for Americans of less than 50 grams a day, about 12 teaspoons, for an average 2,000 calorie diet. The percent DV will vary, a lower amount for a lower calorie diet and higher for a higher calorie diet. The DV can be an easy way to compare food products for added sugars. 5% DV or less of added sugars per serving is considered low. 20% DV or more of added sugars per serving is considered high. Ingredient list. Ingredients are listed in descending order by weight, so where sugar is listed in relation to other ingredients can indicate how much sugar a particular food contains. Added sugars go by many different names, yet they are all a source of extra calories. Food makers can also use sweeteners that aren't technically sugar, a term which is applied only to table sugar, or sucrose, but these other sweeteners are in fact forms of added sugar. Below are some other names for sugar that you may see on food labels. Agave nectar dextrose maltose. Brown sugar evaporated cane juice malt syrup. Cane crystals fructose maple syrup. Cane sugar fruit juice concentrates molasses. Coconut sugar glucose raw sugar. Corn sweetener high fructose corn syrup sucrose. Corn syrup honey syrup. Crystalline fructose invert sugar. Key sources of added sugar. Sugary drinks. Bottle of soda next to pizza and chips. Sugary drinks are a prime source of extra calories that can contribute to weight gain and provide no nutritional benefits. Studies indicate that liquid carbohydrates such as sugar-sweetened beverages are less filling than solid food, causing people to continue to feel hungry after drinking them despite their high calories. 4. They are coming under scrutiny for their contributions to the development of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic conditions. 5. The average 20-ounce bottle of sugar-sweetened soda, lemonade, or iced tea contains about 65 grams of added sugar, often from high fructose corn syrup. That's the equivalent of 16 teaspoons of table sugar. If you were to drink just one 12-ounce can of a sugar-sweetened soft drink every day, and not cut back on calories elsewhere, you could gain up to 15 pounds over 3 years. 6. Be careful to read serving sizes of bottled beverages. Many are sold in 20-ounce bottles, but what is considered one serving of that beverage may still vary among manufacturers. For example, a popular cola drink may list the whole 20-ounce bottle as one serving containing 65 grams of added sugar. Another 20-ounce bottle of lemonade may seem a better choice, showing only 27 grams of added sugar per serving, but the label states that one bottle contains 2.5 servings. Therefore, guzzling the whole bottle would give you almost 68 grams of sugar. To reduce some confusion, the updated nutrition facts label mandates that manufacturers list serving sizes based on what people typically consume, rather than how much they should consume. The typical beverage serving is now considered 12 ounces, increased from 8 ounces, so hopefully in the near future all beverage labels will list the same standard serving size. Cereals and other foods. Bowl of sugary marshmallow, colorful cereal. Choosing minimally processed breakfast foods such as whole grain toast with nut butter, or a bowl of steel-cut or old-fashioned oatmeal that don't have lengthy ingredient lists is a great way to avoid added sugars. Unfortunately, many common breakfast foods such as ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, cereal bars, instant oatmeal with added flavoring, and pastries can contain high amounts of added sugars. Some ingredient lists mask the amount of sugar in a product. To avoid having sugar as the first ingredient, food manufacturers may use multiple forms of sugar, each with a different name, and list each one individually on the nutrient label. But don't be fooled, your body metabolizes all added sugars the same way, as it doesn't distinguish between brown sugar, molasses, honey, and other caloric sweeteners. When reading a label, make sure to spot all sources of added sugars even if they're not listed as the first few ingredients. Also be careful of foods that wear a health halo. For example, one popular cereal advertises that it contains whole grains, fiber, and several antioxidant vitamins like C, E, and beta-carotene. But it also contains 18 grams of added sugar, 4.5 teaspoons, in just one small bowl. Keep in mind serving sizes as well. A crunchy granola bar may contain 2 bars per pack, just one provides 6 grams of added sugar, but if the whole pack is eaten, that number doubles to 12 grams. So you can see how added sugars may add up quickly. Bottom line. The body does not need carbohydrates from added sugars to function. A good rule of thumb is to avoid products that have a lot of added sugar, including skipping foods that list sugar as the first or second ingredient. However, the products may use a variety of sweeteners, so be sure to scan the full ingredient list. Fortunately, the updated nutrition facts label in the US now features a separate line for added sugar, so it's easier to know just how much is added versus naturally occurring. Some tips for reducing added sugar intake. Choose plain yogurt with no added sugar and stir in fresh or frozen fruit or unsweetened applesauce and a dash of cinnamon. Choose cereals with 5% of the daily value or less of added sugars and add sliced ripe banana or berries. Choose water, seltzer, herbal tea, coffee, and other beverages with no added sugar. Add a slice of orange, lemon, lime, or cucumber for a subtle flavor boost. When a sweets craving hits, try one of these first: a quarter cup of unsweetened dried fruit, 1 cup of ripe fresh fruit, or a 1-ounce square of 75% dark chocolate. When baking, reduce the amount of added sugar by 1/4 cup. Or reduce the sugar by substituting half the amount with unsweetened applesauce or mashed ripe banana. For example, instead of 1 cup of sugar, use half a cup sugar and half a cup mashed fruit. If you choose to enjoy a favorite treat high in sugar, practice eating a smaller portion than usual. Enjoy it fully by chewing slowly and savoring it. Your taste buds can adjust to sweetness levels. As you consistently reduce your total sugar intake, you may notice your sweets cravings lessen or that certain foods now taste too sweet. Sustainability. Sustainability is a multifaceted issue, in which the food production system and our diets play a crucial role. Achieving a healthy and sustainable food future is an urgent matter that depends on global collaborative efforts. What is sustainability, and what does it have to do with food? Sustainability can be hard to define, as it can mean different things based on the context in which it's discussed. However, the concept is much more than a trending buzzword. The most frequently quoted definition was put forth by the UN's Brundtland Commission on Sustainable Development in 1987. Sustainable development meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. 1. Jeffrey D. Sachs, an expert on sustainable development and director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University, wrote, "Like all living species, humanity depends on nature for food and water, materials for survival, and safety from dire environmental threats, such as epidemics and natural catastrophes. Yet for a species that depends on the beneficence of nature, or on what the scientists call environmental services, we are doing a poor job of protecting the physical basis of our very survival." 2. Indeed, sustainability encompasses the environment, economics, health, nutrition, and other related dimensions. This interconnectedness can be observed in the FAO's definition of sustainable diets. Sustainable diets are those diets with low environmental impacts that contribute to food and nutrition security and to healthy life for present and future generations. Sustainable diets are protective and respectful of biodiversity and ecosystems, culturally acceptable, accessible, economically fair and affordable, nutritionally adequate, safe and healthy, while optimizing natural and human resources. 3. As we refer to it here, sustainability means the enactment of practices that fulfill the needs of society while protecting the physical basis of our long-term survival, our environment. We cannot have a secure food supply unless that food supply is sustainable. Why is a sustainable food supply important? Today, more than 3 billion people are malnourished and many of our planet's 7 billion inhabitants eat diets low in quality. At the same time, the world's population is rapidly expanding, and it is estimated there will be close to 10 billion people on our planet by 2050. 4. When considering sustainable food development, the goal is to ensure a future when this expanded population has both enough food available to eat and access to high-quality, nutritious foods. Thinking about a successful food future must focus on the Earth system as a whole, rather than local levels. The Anthropocene is a term used to describe the current geological epoch, a time period defined by humanity being the dominating driver of change in atmospheric, geologic, hydrologic, biospheric and other Earth systems. In other words, humanity's influence is at its greatest point in the history of our planet. The term anthropogenic is an adjective that denotes originating in human activity. Earth. In terms of anthropogenic activities, agriculture is the largest cause of global environmental change. Examples of global environmental change include climate change, deforestation, desertification, and damage to coastal reefs and marine ecosystems. Food production contributes approximately 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and the livestock sector alone represents almost half, 14.5%, of these emissions. 5. 6. Occupies about 40% of global land. 7. Uses 70% of freshwater. 8. Is the largest factor threatening species with extinction. 9. Causes eutrophication, nutrient overload, and dead zones in lakes and coastal areas. 10. Has led to a majority, 60%, of the world fish stocks to be fully fished or overfished. 33%, only 7% are underfished. 11. Such global environmental change increases the risk of irreversible and catastrophic shifts in the Earth system marked by rising human mortality, morbidity, conflict, and food insecurity. 12. Agriculture in its current form is simultaneously a driver of global environmental change and a victim of shifting environmental conditions. 13. Without action, the world risks failing to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Simply put, global food systems are not sustainable. We need to rethink how we eat and rethink the way we produce food in the process. Healthy diets from sustainable food systems. Despite substantial scientific evidence linking diets with human health and environmental sustainability, historically there's been a lack of globally agreed upon targets for healthy diets and sustainable food production. However, in 2019, the Eat Lancet Commission, a group of 37 scientists from 16 countries working in the fields of human health, nutrition, economics, agriculture, political sciences, and environmental sustainability, assessed existing evidence and developed global scientific targets that define a safe operating space for food systems. 14. These targets focus on two key areas that apply to all people and the planet. A variety of protein foods, including egg, salmon, beef, chicken, beans, lentils, almonds, quinoa, oats, broccoli, artichokes, yogurt, cheese, and tofu. Target 1. Healthy diets. Based on extensive research on foods, dietary patterns, and health outcomes, the Commission defines a planetary health diet with consumption ranges for each food group. Despite its name, this is not a specific diet but rather a flexible dietary pattern that largely consists of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and unsaturated oils, includes a low to moderate amount of seafood and poultry, and includes no or a low quantity of red meat, processed meat, added sugar, refined grains, and starchy vegetables. According to the Commission, global adoption of this pattern of eating would provide major health benefits, including a large reduction in total mortality. Farm field growing carrots. Target 2. Sustainable food production. With current food production driving climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and unsustainable changes in water and land use, the Commission also identifies a set of boundaries that global food production should stay within to decrease the risk of irreversible and potentially catastrophic shifts in the Earth system. These boundaries relate to 6 key Earth system processes: climate change, based on greenhouse gas emissions; land system change, based on cropland use, use of freshwater; biodiversity loss, based on extinction rate; and nitrogen and phosphorus cycling, based on the application of these fertilizers. A great food transformation is necessary. Transitioning to a sustainable food system that can deliver healthy diets for an estimated 10 billion people by 2050 is an unprecedented challenge. However, the Commission emphasizes that data are both sufficient and strong enough to warrant immediate action, and delay will increase the likelihood of serious, even disastrous, consequences. Fortunately, their analysis found this transition would be doable through a combination of substantial dietary shifts toward mostly plant-based dietary patterns, dramatic reductions in food losses and waste, and major improvements in food production practices. Of course, such a great food transformation will not happen without widespread, multi-sector, multi-level action guided by scientific targets. To begin this process, the Commission proposes 5 strategies as general starting points for national, regional, city, and local change. Seek international and national commitment to shift toward healthy diets. Transitioning to a planetary health diet will require global consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar to decrease by 50%, while consumption of fruits, nuts, vegetables, and legumes must double. Policies are needed to improve the availability, access, and affordability of healthy foods while disincentivizing the consumption of unhealthy and unsustainable foods. Reorient agricultural priorities from producing high quantities of food to producing healthy food. Shift the emphasis in food and agricultural policy from high volumes of a few crops to greater diversity of nutrient-rich crops. Sustainably intensify food production to increase high-quality output. Use technology and system innovation to farm existing land with fewer inputs in order to experience better yields, sequester carbon, and conserve existing biodiversity and ecosystem services. Strong and coordinated governance of land and oceans. Protect natural ecosystems and biodiversity by collectively acting, at local and global levels, to halt the expansion of agricultural land and harvested marine areas. At least have food losses and waste, in line with UN Sustainable Development Goals. Reduce food loss and waste in food production and consumption phases by 50% using a mix of technological solutions, consumer campaigns, and public policies. For more information and specifics on these strategies, read the Commission's full report, Food in the Anthropocene, the Eat Lancet Commission on Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems. Or, read the Commission's briefs for cities, policymakers, farmers, food service professionals, healthcare professionals, and everyone. Bottom line. Achieving a healthy and sustainable food system is an urgent matter that depends on collaborative efforts from governments, the private and public sectors, as well as individuals. Supply and demand work both ways. A shift in the food production landscape depends on a shift in our diets. We must be aware that our food choices ultimately impact more than just ourselves, and primarily plant-based diets are best for both health outcomes and the environment. In the end, what's good for the planet is good for us too. Related. Center for Climate, Health, and the Global Environment at Harvard Th Chan School of Public Health, Harvard Chan Sea Change. For stories of climate hope and action, subscribe to the Climate Optimist newsletter. Plate and the Planet. Icon of a globe with a fork and spoon on the sides, representing eating sustainably for the planet's health. Just as different foods can have differing impacts on human health, they also have differing impacts on the environment. Shifting towards a planetary health diet can nurture both people and planet. Human diets inextricably link health and environmental sustainability, and have the potential to nurture both. 1. Increased food production over the past 50 years has helped improve life expectancy and reduce hunger, infant and child mortality rates, and global poverty. However, such benefits are now being offset by shifts towards unhealthy diets. Globally, as nations have urbanized and citizen incomes have increased, traditional diets, typically higher in quality plant-based foods, have transitioned to a Western-style dietary pattern, characterized by high consumption of calories, highly processed foods, refined carbohydrates, added sugars, sodium, and unhealthy fats, and high amounts of animal products. 3. Along with the negative human health impacts associated with this nutrition transition, this dietary pattern is also unsustainable. Current food production is already driving climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and drastic changes in land and water use. Different food, different impact. Along with varying impacts on human health, different foods also have differing impacts on the environment. As shown in the figure below, the production of animal-based foods tends to have higher greenhouse gas emissions, orange bars, than producing plant-based foods, and dairy and red meat, especially beef, stand out for their disproportionate impact. Beyond emissions, it's also important to note that food production places an enormous demand upon our natural resources, as agriculture is a major contributor to deforestation, species extinction, and freshwater depletion and contamination. In this figure, these impacts are represented by land use, green bars, and freshwater consumption, blue bars. Footprint calculator. Want to know the environmental impact of your diet? Take this quick 5-minute survey to find your carbon, nitrogen, and water footprints. Transitioning towards healthy diets from sustainable food systems, especially with our global population slated to reach 10 billion by 2050, poses an unprecedented challenge. However, research by an international working group of scientists shows this great food transformation could be achievable through a combination of dramatic reductions in food losses and waste, major improvements in food production practices, and substantial dietary shifts toward mostly plant-based dietary patterns. 1. Defining a planetary health diet. In 2019, the Eat Lancet Commission developed the world's first scientific targets for healthy and sustainable food systems, including a planetary health diet with defined daily consumption ranges for each food group. This dietary pattern, characterized by a variety of high-quality plant-based foods and low amounts of animal-based foods, refined grains, added sugars, and unhealthy fats, is designed to be flexible to accommodate local and individual situations, traditions, and dietary preferences. Scientific targets for a planetary health diet. Created to meet nutritional requirements and promote health, all while staying within planetary boundaries, the Commission found that global adoption of this planetary health diet would provide major health benefits. Modeling studies show that between 10.9 to 11.6 million early deaths could be averted each year, a 19% to 23.6% reduction from current adult mortality rates. 1. Farm field growing carrots. Compared with current diets, this shift will require global consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar to decrease by 50%, while consumption of fruits, nuts, vegetables, and legumes must double. That said, the Commission emphasizes the importance of tailoring these targets to local situations. For example, while North American countries currently consume almost 6.5 times the recommended amount of red meat, countries in South Asia eat only half the recommended amount. 1. Undoubtedly, making such a radical shift to the global food system is unprecedented, and will depend on widespread, multi-sector, multi-level action. Alongside dramatic reductions in food waste and major improvements in food production practices, the Commission's report calls for international and national commitment through a range of policy measures and actions needed to make healthy and sustainable foods more available, accessible, and affordable. From governments and policymakers to marketers, industry, the media, educational institutions, farmers, chefs, physicians, and consumers, everyone has an important role to play in this great food transformation. Plant forward for planetary health. The term plant forward is defined as a style of cooking and eating that emphasizes and celebrates, but is not limited to, foods from plant sources, fruits and vegetables, produce, whole grains, legumes, pulses, nuts and seeds, plant oils, and herbs and spices, and reflects evidence-based principles of health and sustainability. Created through Menus of Change, a joint initiative of the Culinary Institute of America and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health's Department of Nutrition, Plant Forward describes a broad set of dietary patterns and approaches to menu design that deliver both personal and planetary health, but also preserve a wide range of choices. Preparing a planetary health plate. It's clear that what we put on our plates has a major impact on the environment. Eating more healthfully and more sustainably go hand in hand, meaning we can develop sustainable eating practices that improve our own health while also benefiting the health of the planet. If you're interested in practicing a planetary health diet, but confused by the specific targets in the table above, here are some tips that may help. First of all, be sure to note that these ranges are based on daily energy intake of 2,500 calories for an average adult. That means your individual optimal intake will depend on age, body size, and level of physical activity. The Commission's report includes special considerations for young children, adolescents, and pregnant and breastfeeding women. Graphic indicating healthier food choices for individual health and planetary health. This dietary pattern is also intended to be flexible enough to accommodate individual situations, traditions, and dietary preferences. Animal products are minimized, not completely excluded, so there is a range of options for omnivores as well as those who follow vegetarian or vegan diets. Seeing certain foods listed in grams per day may be unfamiliar. For example, how to eat only 13 grams of eggs per day when a single large egg is about 50 grams. You might be able to stick to this amount if you scramble a single egg into a stir-fry serving for multiple people. However, it's easier to think about your egg consumption on a weekly basis, where this equates to around 2 eggs. The same goes for other animal products. Eating even the upper limit of 14 grams per day of red meat, a fraction of a single hamburger patty, may not be as realistic as thinking about saving this daily amount for one day during the week, e.g. eating one whole hamburger patty. Aim to consume no more than 98 grams of red meat, pork, beef or lamb, 203 grams of poultry, and 196 grams of fish per week. Understandably, if you've grown up, or have grown accustomed to, having beef, pork, and other red meats on your plate at most meals, such a change may seem daunting. But remember, you don't have to completely cut it out to make a difference for your health and the health of the planet. If you're not quite sure where to start, here are 4 key approaches to cutting back the red meat while keeping your meals filling and flavorful. To get a sense of implementing this dietary pattern over the course of a week, here is a sample of what someone eating a varied, Western diet, of 2,500 calories, might select. Sample 7-day meal plan. It also helps to see these targets visualized as a complete plate, half of which would be filled with fruits and vegetables. Starchy vegetables, like potatoes, are limited, while the other half should consist of primarily whole grains and plant-based protein foods, with unsaturated oils and modest amounts of animal-based protein foods. Look familiar? This guidance is closely aligned with the healthy eating plate. What else can I do? Alongside a shift to a planetary health diet, moving towards a more sustainable food future will also require major improvements in food production practices and significant reductions in food losses and waste. Food waste is another complex problem that occurs well before our homes, but here are some strategies for shopping, storing, and repurposing that can minimize your personal impact. A globe on a plate indicating healthy plate, healthy planet. Learn simple steps to optimize personal and planetary health. In just 10 minutes, this interactive learning program shows how key food choices can impact your health and that of the planet. Learn why certain foods deserve special attention and discover a flexible approach that can work for everyone. This free interactive learning experience is a fun and practical educational tool for all ages. A collaboration between the educational nonprofit Gapless Institute and the Department of Nutrition at Harvard Th Chan School of Public Health. Related. Bowl of blueberries and greens in the shape of the planet. Watch, eating for a healthy body and a healthy planet. Our diets clearly affect our health and they may also determine the future of our planet. This recorded panel discussion from the Harvard Chan Studio examines the connections between personal and planetary health, with a particular emphasis on how our dietary choices can influence climate change, antibiotic resistance, and food security. Panelists explore concepts including mindful eating, cultivated meat, blue diets rooted in the ocean, and sustainable agricultural practices. Food waste. Pile of food scraps in compost bin. The big picture. Food waste occurs along the entire spectrum of production, from the farm to distribution to retailers to the consumer. Reasons include losses from mold, pests, or inadequate climate control, losses from cooking, and intentional food waste. 1. This waste is categorized differently based on where it occurs. Food loss occurs before the food reaches the consumer as a result of issues in the production, storage, processing, and distribution phases. Food waste refers to food that is fit for consumption but consciously discarded at the retail or consumption phases. Wasted food has far-reaching effects, both nationally and globally. In the U.S., up to 40% of all food produced goes uneaten. 2. and about 95% of discarded food ends up in landfills. 3. It is the largest component of municipal solid waste at 21%. 1. In 2014, more than 38 million tons of food waste was generated, with only 5% diverted from landfills and incinerators for composting. 3. Decomposing food waste produces methane, a strong greenhouse gas that contributes to global warming. Worldwide, 1/3 of food produced is thrown away uneaten, causing an increased burden on the environment. 4. It is estimated that reducing food waste by 15% could feed more than 25 million Americans every year. 5. Benefits of less food waste. Cost savings on labor through more efficient handling, preparation, and storage of food that will be used. Cost savings when purchasing only as much food as needed, and avoiding additional costs of disposal. Reduced methane emissions from landfills and a lower carbon footprint. Better management of energy and resources, preventing pollution involved in the growing, manufacturing, transporting, and selling of food. Community benefits by providing donated, untouched, and safe food that would otherwise be thrown out. 6. Proposed solutions to food waste. Globally, reducing wasted food has been cited as a key initiative in achieving a sustainable food future. Sustainable Development Goal 12 addresses responsible consumption and production, which includes 2 indicators to measure, in order to ultimately reduce global food loss and food waste. 7. In the U.S., on June 4, 2013, the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Protection Agency launched the U.S. Food Waste Challenge, calling on entities across the food chain, including farms, agricultural processors, food manufacturers, grocery stores, restaurants, universities, schools, and local governments. 1. The goals are to reduce food waste by improving product development, storage, shopping/ordering, marketing, labeling, and cooking methods. Recover food waste by connecting potential food donors to hunger relief organizations like food banks and pantries. Recycle food waste to feed animals or to create compost, bioenergy, and natural fertilizers. On September 16, 2015, both agencies also announced for the first time a national food loss and waste goal, calling for a 50% reduction by 2030 to improve overall food security and conserve natural resources. The National Resources Defense Council issued a summary paper providing guidelines on how to reduce waste throughout the food production chain. 2. The following are some focal points. State and local governments can incorporate food waste prevention and education campaigns, and implement municipal composting programs. Governments can provide tax credits to farmers who donate excess produce to local food banks. Proposed bills are currently in place in California, Arizona, Oregon, and Colorado. Businesses such as restaurants, grocery stores, and institutional food services can evaluate the extent of their food waste and adopt best practices. Examples include supermarkets selling damaged or nearly expired produce at discounted prices, or offering half-off promotions instead of buy one get one free promotions. Restaurants can offer smaller portions and donate excess ingredients and prepared uneaten food to charities. Schools may experiment with concepts that allow children to create their own meals to prevent less discarded food, such as with salad bars or build-your-own burritos. Farms can evaluate food losses during processing, distribution, and storage and adopt best practices. Farmers' markets can sell ugly produce, which are discarded, misshapen fruits and vegetables that do not meet the usual standards for appearance. Farms can sell fresh but unmarketable produce, due to appearance, to food banks at a reduced rate. Consumers can learn when food is no longer safe and edible, how to cook and store food properly, and how to compost. See Tackling Food Waste at Home. The Environmental Protection Agency provides the food recovery hierarchy graphic to explain ways to handle excess food. 8. From the most preferred at the top of the pyramid to the least preferred at the bottom tip, the methods include source reduction, earliest prevention by reducing the overall volume of food produced. Feed hungry people, donating excess food to community sites. Feed animals, donating food scraps and waste to local farmers who can use them for animal feed. Industrial uses, donating used fats, oils, and grease to make biodiesel fuel. Composting, food waste that is composted to produce organic matter that is used to fertilize soil. Landfill/incineration, a last resort for unused food. Healthy weight. A bunch of people walking, running, and biking on an oceanside promenade. What is a healthy weight? A healthy weight is a number that is associated with a low risk of weight-related diseases and health issues. Although healthy weight guidelines have been developed at population levels, each person's healthy weight range will vary and depend on factors such as age, sex, genetics, body frame, existing medical history, lifestyle habits, and weight as a young adult. Weight is only one of many determinants of health. Body mass index, BMI, which measures weight standardized for height, is often used as a measure of health risk. Although it does not measure body fat or body composition directly, research has shown BMI to correlate closely with other methods that directly measure body fat. How useful are the MetLife height-weight tables? There are many reasons for weight gain, including certain medications, corticosteroids, antidepressants, beta blockers, antipsychotics, insulin, pregnancy, chronic stress, chronically poor sleep, and excessive calorie intake, and lack of adequate exercise. 4. It is beneficial to keep a steady weight as much as possible and control excessive weight gain over time, which is strongly associated with health risks. Maintain, don't gain. Maintaining a healthy weight can lower the risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure, and many different cancers. 5. Your weight, waist size, and the amount of weight gained since your mid-20s can have health implications. These factors may strongly influence your chances of developing the following diseases and conditions. Cardiovascular disease including heart attack and stroke, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, gallstones, asthma, cataracts, infertility, snoring, sleep apnea. Most adults gain on average 1 to 2 pounds each year. 6. Gaining weight as you age increases the chances of developing one or more chronic diseases. In the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, middle-aged women and men who gained 11 to 22 pounds after age 20 were up to 3 times more likely to develop heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and gallstones than those who gained 5 pounds or fewer. 7 to 11, those who gained more than 22 pounds had an even larger risk of developing these diseases. Another analysis of Nurses' Health Study data found that adult weight gain can increase the risk of postmenopausal breast cancer, even after menopause. 12. Encouragingly, for women who had never used hormone replacement therapy, losing weight after menopause and keeping it off cut their risk of postmenopausal breast cancer in half. Does having overweight reduce mortality? What causes weight gain? Diet. The quantity and quality of food in your diet has a strong impact on weight. Genes. Some people are genetically predisposed to gain weight more easily than others or to store fat around the midsection. Genes do not have to become destiny, however, and studies suggest that eating a healthy diet, staying active, and avoiding unhealthy habits like drinking soda can prevent the genetic predisposition to risk for obesity. 16. Read more about genetic risk for obesity on the Obesity Prevention Source. Physical inactivity. Exercise has a host of health benefits, including reducing the chances of developing heart disease, some types of cancer, and other chronic diseases. 17. Physical activity is a key element of weight control and health. Stress. Chronic stress can lead to unhealthy eating habits, such as elevated cortisol levels causing cravings for comfort foods of highly processed snacks or sweets, having lower motivation to prepare balanced meals or even forgetting to eat, and disrupting sleep that can lead to higher intakes of caffeine or high-calorie sugary snacks to boost energy. Inadequate sleep. Research suggests that there's a link between how much people sleep and how much they weigh. In general, children and adults who get too little sleep tend to weigh more than those who get enough sleep. 19. The influence of our environments. As important as individual choices are when it comes to health, no one person behaves in a vacuum. The physical and social environment in which people live plays a huge role in the food and activity choices they make. And unfortunately, in the US and increasingly around the globe, our environments are not optimized for healthy living. From the persistent marketing and availability of unhealthy foods and sugary drinks, to time and safety constraints for staying active, individuals are faced with a variety of challenges. Obesity and its causes have, in many ways, become woven into the fabric of our society. To successfully disentangle them will take a multifaceted approach that not only gives people the skills to make healthier choices but also sets in place policy and infrastructure that support those choices. Benefits of even modest weight loss. If you have gained more than 25 pounds in adulthood, losing that weight may seem daunting. And when the extra weight doesn't feel good, you may be tempted to start a drastic weight loss plan. But the good news is that even a modest weight loss of 5% of your current body weight is likely to produce several health benefits, including improvements in blood pressure, blood cholesterol, blood sugars, physical mobility, and quality of life. 21. Tips to lose weight safely. Keep it slow and steady. People who lose weight gradually and steadily, about 1 to 2 pounds per week, are more successful at keeping weight off. This allows the body to adjust to the change and can lower the risk of developing strong cravings and feelings of deprivation that often accompany more rapid weight loss. Include self-management and monitoring. This includes setting goals such as with the SMART acronym, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Start by creating 2 to 3 short-term SMART goals. Self-monitoring such as with daily or weekly food journaling or using behavior apps can provide insight and accountability to eating behaviors. This category also includes problem-solving, such as having a plan for relapses if weight is regained due to stressful life changes, holidays, or job demands. 6. Create a support system. Research suggests that having frequent contact with others for support, example, trusted family member or friend, physician, health coach, registered dietitian, or a fellow friend or coworker on a similar healthy weight journey, can be valuable in providing encouragement and accountability. 6. Develop healthy eating patterns. Although some researchers have questioned the usefulness of energy balance, calories eaten versus calories expended, current evidence indicates that calorie reduction remains the most effective approach for weight control. There are many dietary strategies, example, high-carb low-fat versus low-carb high-fat versus intermittent fasting versus a Mediterranean diet, but research has not consistently shown greater weight loss with one plan over another in the long term. The healthy eating plate model that provides balanced nutrition and portion control is a good place to start. Practice mindfulness. Do you eat too fast or while distracted watching television or scrolling through your phone? Do you stress eat or snack even when not hungry? Mindful eating addresses these behaviors that are associated with weight gain. Increasing awareness and appreciation of food can provide greater satisfaction, physically and mentally, that may help reduce overeating. Stay active. Exercise is one component in maintaining a healthy weight and preventing weight gain, but it also plays a key role in well-being and mental health. The National Weight Control Registry, which follows people who have lost and maintained a 30-pound loss for at least 1 year, shows that participants include about 1 hour of moderate vigorous exercise daily such as brisk walking. However, there is variation among participants, with some requiring more exercise and some less to keep the weight off. How much is needed will depend on one's genes and lifestyle factors. Performing different types of exercises can expand the range of benefits even further. Prioritize self-care. In a rushed society with never-ending demands, taking care of our bodies can quickly fall to the bottom of our priority list. Dedicating time to care for one's emotional, physical, and spiritual needs can promote a healthy weight. Many of the factors listed above are examples of self-care. Others could be discovering a new hobby, practicing daily meditation, or allowing time to just do nothing. Self-care may help improve mood and a sense of well-being, and increase motivation and energy levels. It also cultivates self-compassion and resilience, as one learns to accept their mistakes and move on. Should I try a health and nutrition app? Smartphone or mobile health apps are self-monitoring, easily accessible tools people can use to track their weight and dietary intake. Self-monitoring is closely associated with self-efficacy, defined as a person having confidence in their ability to improve one's health by changing behaviors. 22. People can use these apps to assess their nutritional intake by logging specific foods and eating patterns. Apps may provide a food database from which to search, a photo function to take pictures of meals, a scanning tool to find food products using barcodes, or food icons. Other apps monitor eating behaviors such as stress-related or emotional eating, eating quickly or on the run, and overeating. A major benefit of these tools is increased awareness of types of foods eaten and eating behaviors that could be contributing to weight gain or changes in metabolic parameters such as high blood glucose or cholesterol. The number of health-related apps targeting behavior change has boomed, with more than 325,000 apps commercially available in 2017. 22. Health apps are often low-cost or free, and can be effective at-home monitoring tools that complement traditional care such as in-person visits to a doctor or dietitian. For example, if a healthcare provider advises a patient to lose weight to improve a chronic health condition, a nutritional app can provide tracking, accountability, and interaction that engages the patient until the next healthcare provider visit. This may be especially useful for certain groups. One study found that rural men were more likely to successfully use health apps for weight loss/nutrition programs than to participate in face-to-face programs, due to cultural norms of self-reliance. 23. Meta-analyses show that people who use apps can experience greater weight loss, decreased waist circumference, and lower calorie intake compared with controls, in the short term. 24. 25. Other studies have shown benefits in improving nutrition behaviors, blood pressure, and blood cholesterol. 25. However, there are limitations to these meta-analyses that made comparisons difficult. The studies used different commercial apps with varying functions, and participants used the apps at varying levels, example, daily versus weekly. Also, most of the studies were of short duration at less than 6 months. 22. 25. Generally, the more often the app was used, the greater adherence there was to nutritional goals and achieving weight loss. 26. Unfortunately, many of the studies suggested that app use generally declined over time. Still, health apps are worth a try for anyone starting a healthy lifestyle plan and for those who might not have easy access to other support systems. Body fat. Measuring someone's weight on a scale. Role of body fat. We may not appreciate body fat, especially when it accumulates in specific areas like our bellies or thighs. But fat is an important source of stored energy when we can't get to food for an extended time. Within the matrix of body fat, also called adipose tissue, there is not only fat cells but nerve and immune cells and connective tissue. 2. Fat tissue releases hormones that control metabolism and appetite, i.e., leptin, adiponectin, and that affect insulin sensitivity, i.e., tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 6. Macrophages, neutrophils, and eosinophils are some of the immune cells found in fat tissue that play a role in inflammation, both anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory. Fat cells also secrete proteins and build enzymes involved with immune function and the creation of steroid hormones. Fat cells can grow in size and number. The amount of fat cells in our bodies is determined soon after birth and during adolescence, and tends to be stable throughout adulthood if weight remains fairly stable. 3. But eating too many calories in the long term can cause fat cells to increase in size and be stored in various areas throughout the body, which leads to a risk of chronic inflammation and glitches in healthy metabolism, with the potential for new fat cells to grow. These larger fat cells become resistant to insulin, which increases the risk of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Weight loss can reduce the size of fat cells but not the number. Obesity, defined as an excessive amount of body fat, is a common and expensive medical condition in the U.S., strongly associated with an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancer, as well as premature deaths from these diseases. 1. Learning about the actions and different types of body fat may increase understanding of this condition. Types of body fat. Fat tissue comes in white, brown, beige, and even pink. 2. Some are necessary for good health. Types. Brown fat. Infants carry the most brown fat, which keeps them warm. It is stimulated by cold temperatures to generate heat. The amount of brown fat does not change with increased calorie intake, and those who have overweight or obesity tend to carry less brown fat than lean persons. White fat. These large round cells are the most abundant type and are designed for fat storage, accumulating in the belly, thighs, and hips. They secrete more than 50 types of hormones, enzymes, and growth factors including leptin and adiponectin, which helps the liver and muscles respond better to insulin, a blood sugar regulator. But if there are excessive white cells, these hormones are disrupted and can cause the opposite effect of insulin resistance and chronic inflammation. Beige fat. This type of white fat can be converted to perform similar traits as brown fat, such as being able to generate heat with exposure to cold temperatures or during exercise. Pink fat. This type of white fat is converted to pink during pregnancy and lactation, producing and secreting breast milk. Essential fat. This type may be made up of brown, white, or beige fat and is vital for the body to function normally. It is found in most organs, muscles, and the central nervous system including the brain. It helps to regulate hormones like estrogen, insulin, cortisol, and leptin, control body temperature, and assist in the absorption of vitamins and minerals. When a person's body fat dips below a certain level, about less than 5% in men and less than 10% in women, there may not be enough essential fat to perform these functions. Location. Subcutaneous, you can pinch this layer of fat that sits directly underneath the skin's surface, cushioning the bones and joints. It's the body's most abundant type of fat and tends to accumulate around the waist, hips, upper back, buttocks, and thighs. Very high amounts of subcutaneous fat can increase the risk of disease, though not as significantly as visceral fat. Visceral, an excess of this type of white fat is sometimes referred to as belly fat or central obesity, as it accumulates deep in the abdominal cavity, wrapping around digestive organs like the pancreas, intestines, and liver, but also the heart. Having a lot of visceral fat is linked with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. It may secrete inflammatory chemicals called cytokines that promote insulin resistance. How do I get rid of belly fat? It's a popular question by both men and women. Unfortunately, doing extra sit-ups or drinking apple cider vinegar won't help spot tone this stubborn area. Losing weight can help, though people tend to lose weight pretty uniformly throughout the body rather than in one place. However, a long-term commitment to following exercise guidelines along with eating balanced portion-controlled meals can help to reduce dangerous visceral fat. Also effective is avoiding sugary beverages that are strongly associated with excessive weight gain in children and adults. And don't discount other lifestyle factors such as poor sleep and elevated cortisol levels from chronic stress that are both strongly associated with increased belly fat and weight gain. Learn more about maintaining a healthy weight. Measuring body fat. Obesity, or body fatness, is calculated with various methods that range in accuracy and have limitations. Combining two or more methods, if possible, may better predict if someone has increased health risks related to weight. Body mass index, BMI. One of the most widely used tools for estimating excess fat is the body mass index, BMI. BMI only measures excess weight, calculating a ratio of one's weight to height. However, research has shown that BMI often correlates with gold standard direct measures of fat mass and fat-free mass such as underwater weighing, hydrostatic weighing, and dual X-ray absorptiometry, DEXA. In comparison with these methods that require expensive equipment, BMI is non-invasive, easy to calculate, and can be used anywhere. Because of its simplicity and widespread use, BMI is often used when studying populations. Researchers can compare the BMI of groups of people over time in different areas, to screen for obesity and its related health risks. BMI does have several limitations. It can't measure location of fat, example, belly fat is linked with greater health risks, muscle mass, or bone mass, all of which contribute to weight. One's age, sex, race, and ethnicity can also affect BMI. For example, when comparing two people with the same BMI, women genetically have more body fat and less muscle mass than men. Highly trained athletes may have a high BMI from increased muscle mass but little body fat. Older adults tend to carry more body fat than younger adults. While BMI and weight tend to decline in the elderly, visceral abdominal fat may continue to increase. 5. Men and women with larger body frames may have a higher weight from greater, heavier, bone mass rather than fat mass. Some studies have found that Black individuals have less body fat and more lean muscle than other ethnicities at the same BMI. However, Blacks and Hispanics have the highest rates of obesity in the U.S., so the overall burden of obesity-related diseases is still higher in these groups. For these reasons, BMI might be used as a screening tool for potential weight-related problems rather than to diagnose certain conditions. The accuracy of BMI in predicting health risk may vary across different individuals and racial and ethnic groups. Some populations have higher rates of obesity but that do not have corresponding rates of metabolic diseases like diabetes, and vice versa. 3. For instance, Southeast Asians can have a normal BMI but be metabolically unhealthy. BMI might be supplemented with other measures such as waist circumference or waist-hip ratio that better assess fat distribution. How to determine BMI? Divide your weight in pounds by your height in inches. Divide the answer by your height in inches. Multiply the answer by 703. You can also use the National Heart, Lung and Blood Institute's online BMI calculator or simple BMI tables. Interpreting the BMI number. The World Health Organization defines a normal weight as a BMI of 18.5 to 24.9, overweight or pre-obesity as a BMI of 25.0 to 29.9, and obesity as a BMI of 30 or higher. It further classifies levels of obesity as Class 1, BMI 30.0 to 34.9, Class 2, BMI 35.0 to 39.9, and Class 3, BMI 40 or higher. 6. At a population level, a high BMI is generally associated with an increased risk of disease and early death. Many studies have shown that a BMI above 25 increases the chances of dying early compared to those with normal weight. A meta-analysis published in the New England Journal of Medicine showed a clear relationship between BMI and mortality, where both people with underweight, BMI less than 18.5, and with overweight and obesity, BMI greater than 25, had greater mortality. 7. The lowest death rate from any cause was associated with the BMI range between 22.5 and 24.9. To address some methodological flaws in previous studies, this study excluded smokers who tend to have lower weight due to smoking, individuals with cancer and heart disease who might have lost weight due to these conditions, and individuals over the age of 85 who could have a normal BMI but suffer from frailty or other age-related unhealthy weight loss. Another large meta-analysis in The Lancet that looked at data across 4 continents found that for every 5 units higher of a BMI above 25, risk of premature death increased by about 31%. 8. The study also looked at specific causes of death, and found that for each 5-unit increase in BMI above 25, the corresponding increases in risk were 49% for cardiovascular mortality, 38% for respiratory disease mortality, and 19% for cancer mortality. This meta-analysis also excluded participants who were current or former smokers, those who had chronic diseases at the beginning of the study, and any who died in the first 5 years of follow-up. A combined 1.6 million deaths were recorded across these studies where participants were followed for an average of 14 years. When examining the relationship between BMI and mortality, failure to adjust for these variables can lead to reverse causation, where a low body weight is the result of underlying illness, rather than the cause, or confounding by smoking, because smokers tend to weigh less than non-smokers and have much higher mortality rates. Experts say these methodological flaws have led to paradoxical, misleading results that suggest a survival advantage to being overweight. Waist circumference. Some researchers consider waist circumference to be a better measure of unhealthy body fat than BMI as it addresses visceral abdominal fat, which is associated with metabolic problems, inflammation, and insulin resistance. 3.9. It is a good predictor of disease risk and early mortality, and provides a clearer picture of health, as abdominal fat can increase even if total weight remains the same. An increasing waist size can be an important warning sign that prompts a closer look at potentially unhealthy lifestyle habits. In people who do not have overweight, increasing waist size over time may be an even more telling warning sign of increased health risks than BMI alone. 5.10. The Nurses' Health Study looked at the relationship between waist size and death from heart disease, cancer, or any cause in middle-aged women. 10. At the start of the study, more than 44,000 healthy volunteers measured their waist and hip sizes. After 16 years, women who reported the highest waist sizes, 35 inches or larger, had nearly double the risk of dying from heart disease, compared with women who reported the lowest waist sizes, less than 28 inches. Women in the group with the largest waists had a similarly high risk of death from cancer or any cause, compared with women with the smallest waists. The risks increased steadily with each additional inch around the waist. Yet even women with a normal weight, BMI less than 25, were at higher risk if they carried more of that weight around their waist. Normal weight women with a waist of 35 inches or higher had 3 times the risk of death from heart disease, compared with normal weight women whose waists were smaller than 35 inches. The Shanghai Women's Health Study found a similar relationship between increasing waist size and risk of death from any cause in normal weight women. 11. How to measure and interpret waist size. Wear thin clothing or no clothing. Stand up straight and wrap a flexible measuring tape around your midsection, laying the tape flat so it crosses your navel, belly button. The tape should be snug but not pinched too tightly around the waist. Inhale and exhale regularly, and then read the measurement. In other words, don't inhale deeply and hold your breath while measuring. You can repeat the measurement 2 to 3 times to ensure a consistent reading. According to an expert panel convened by the National Institutes of Health, a waist size larger than 40 inches for men and 35 inches for women increases the chances of developing heart disease, cancer, or other chronic diseases. 12-13. Waist-to-hip ratio. Like the waist circumference, the waist-to-hip ratio, WHR, is used to measure abdominal obesity. It's calculated by measuring the waist and the hip, at the widest diameter of the buttocks, and then dividing the waist by the hip measurement. It is inexpensive and simple to use, and a good predictor of disease risk and early mortality. Some believe that WHR may be a better indicator of risk than waist circumference alone, as waist size can vary based on body frame size, but a large study found that waist circumference and WHR were equally effective at predicting risk of death from heart disease, cancer, or any cause. 10. Still, WHR can be more complex to interpret than waist circumference, since a higher WHR reading can be caused by excess abdominal fat and/or decreased lean muscle mass around the hips. The World Health Organization has also found that cutoff points that define health risks may vary by ethnicity. For example, Asians appear to show higher metabolic risk when carrying higher body fat at a lower BMI, therefore the cutoff value for a healthy WHR in Asian women is 0.80 or less, compared with 0.85 or less in Caucasian women. 14. How to measure and interpret WHR. Stand up straight and follow the directions for measuring waist circumference. Then wrap the tape measure around the widest part of the buttocks. Divide the waist size by the hip size. The WHO defines abdominal obesity in men as a WHR more than 0.90, for women, more than 0.85. 14. Waist-to-height ratio. Waist-to-height ratio, WHTR, is a simple, inexpensive screening tool that measures visceral abdominal fat. It has been supported by research to predict cardiometabolic risk factors such as hypertension and early death, even when BMI falls within a healthy range. 15-16. When the waist circumference is less than half one's height, it is considered lower risk. To determine WHTR, divide waist circumference in inches by height in inches. A measurement of 0.5 or higher is an indicator of health risks related to visceral obesity. Additional measures of body fat. Although less commonly used, here are some other methods for measuring body fat. Skin fold thickness. Bioelectric impedance, BIA. Underwater weighing, densitometry or hydrostatic weighing. Air displacement plethysmography. Dilution method, hydrometry. Dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, DEXA. Computerized tomography, CT, and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI. Is it healthier to carry excess weight than being too thin? It's certainly possible to be dangerously thin. Individuals with eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa and bulimia and those with wasting diseases such as cancer, AIDS, and heart failure can lose so much weight that they don't have enough energy or basic building blocks to keep themselves alive. What about people who are thin but don't have an eating disorder or serious illness? Some studies suggest that the connection between body mass index and premature death follows a U-shaped curve. This means that weighing too much or too little isn't as healthy as weighing somewhere in the middle. The problem is that most of these studies included smokers and individuals with early, but undetected, chronic and fatal diseases. Cigarette smokers as a group weigh less than non-smokers, in part because smoking deadens the appetite. Potentially deadly chronic diseases such as cancer, emphysema, kidney failure, and heart failure can cause weight loss even before they cause symptoms and have been diagnosed. So low weights don't necessarily cause early death. Instead, low weight is often the result of illnesses or habits that may be fatal. Many epidemiologic studies confirm that increasing weight is associated with increasing disease risk. The American Cancer Society fielded 2 large long-term cancer prevention studies that included more than 1 million adults who were followed for at least 12 years. 18-19, they excluded people who smoked and others who could experience secondary weight loss from an illness such as cancer or cardiovascular disease, or who developed a chronic disease in the first few years of follow-up. Both studies showed a clear pattern of increasing mortality with increasing weight. The data confirmed similar observations from a 27-year follow-up of more than 19,000 middle-aged men in the Harvard Alumni Health Study, 20, a 16-year follow-up of more than 115,000 middle-aged women in the Nurses' Health Study, 21, a 12-year follow-up of non-smoking Seventh-day Adventists, 22, and a 10-year follow-up of more than 500,000 middle-aged men and women in the National Institutes of Health/AARP study. 23. Another analysis of the cancer prevention study cohort found that increased weight was tied to increased mortality from all cancers and specific cancers, 24. In fact, study investigators estimated that overweight and obesity is responsible for 14% of all cancer deaths in women and 20% of all cancer deaths in men. According to the current dietary guidelines for Americans, a body mass index below 18.5 falls outside the healthy range. But some people live long, healthy lives with a low body mass index. Here's a good rule of thumb: if you've always had a low body mass index and your weight and health condition doesn't change much, don't worry. But if you start losing weight without trying, discuss with your doctor the reasons why this could be happening. Learn more about maintaining a healthy weight. The best diet, quality counts. Basket of food including grapes, apples, asparagus, onions, lettuce, carrots, melon, bananas, corn. Dietary guidelines have changed over the years as research becomes more accurate in determining what we should eat to attain optimal health and weight. The strongest evidence to date shows that calories matter, but focusing on food quality is an equally important part of preventing weight gain and promoting weight loss. Focus on eating high-quality foods in appropriately sized portions. Consider quality, not just calories. A calorie is an oft-repeated dietary slogan, and not overeating is indeed an important health measure. Rather than focusing on calories alone, however, emerging research shows that quality is also key in determining what we should eat and what we should avoid in order to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. Rather than choosing foods based only on caloric value, think instead about choosing high-quality, healthy foods, and minimizing low-quality foods. High-quality foods include unrefined, minimally processed foods such as vegetables and fruits, whole grains, healthy fats, and healthy sources of protein, the foods recommended in the healthy eating plate. Lower quality foods include highly processed snack foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, refined, white, grains, refined sugar, fried foods, foods high in saturated and trans fats, and high glycemic foods such as potatoes. There isn't one perfect diet for everyone, owing to individual differences in genes and lifestyle. Quality counts. One study analyzed whether certain foods were more or less likely to promote weight gain. This type of research examining specific foods and drinks allows us to understand whether a calorie is a calorie, or if eating more higher quality foods and fewer lower quality foods can lead to weight loss and maintenance. Researchers in the Department of Nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health show us that quality is in fact very important in determining what we should eat to achieve and maintain a healthy weight, and that the notion of a calorie is a calorie does not tell the whole story. In a study of over 120,000 healthy women and men spanning 20 years, researchers determined that weight change was most strongly associated with the intake of potato chips, potatoes, sugar-sweetened beverages, and both processed and unprocessed red meats. The researchers concluded that consumption of processed foods higher in starches, refined grains, fats, and sugars can increase weight gain. Foods shown to be associated with weight loss were vegetables, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and yogurt. Researchers did not discount the importance of calories, instead suggesting that choosing high-quality foods, and decreasing consumption of lower-quality foods, is an important factor in helping individuals consume fewer calories. 23. View the HSPH news release. Changes in specific dietary factors may have big impact on long-term weight gain. Weight loss strategy to only eat less, exercise more may be overly simplistic. Managing macronutrients, does it matter? With the proliferation of macronutrient-based diets over the past several decades, from low-fat to low-carbohydrate, discussion of the three main macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, has become standard when talking about optimal diets. Researchers have begun comparing these macronutrient management-style diets to one another in order to determine which is most effective, but thus far evidence is largely inconclusive. One study, published in JAMA in 2007, compared 4 weight loss diets ranging from low to high carbohydrate intake. This 12-month trial followed over 300 overweight and obese premenopausal women, randomly assigning them to either an Atkins, very low carbohydrate, zone, low carbohydrate, learn, high carbohydrate, or Ornish, very high in carbohydrate, diet. After 1 year, weight loss was greater for women in the Atkins diet group compared with the other diet groups. This study also examined secondary outcomes focused on metabolic effects, such as cholesterol, body fat percentage, glucose levels, and blood pressure, and found that those for the Atkins group were comparable with or more favorable than the other diet groups. There was no significant difference in weight loss among the other 3 diets, Zone, Learn, and Ornish. This study does raise questions about long-term effects and mechanisms, but the researchers concluded that a low-carbohydrate, high-protein, high-fat diet may be considered a feasible recommendation for weight loss. 24. Another study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2009, challenged the above study's findings by testing 4 different types of diets and producing results that showed comparable average weight loss among the different diets. The study followed 800 people over 2 years, assigning subjects to one of 4 diets: low-fat and average protein, low-fat and high protein, high-fat and average protein, and high-fat and high protein. Researchers concluded that all of the diets resulted in meaningful weight loss, despite the differences in macronutrient composition. The study also found that the more group counseling sessions participants attended, the more weight they lost, and the less weight they regained. This supports the idea that not only is what you eat important, but behavioral, psychological, and social factors are important for weight loss as well. 25. An additional study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2010, looked at the role of protein and glycemic index upon weight loss maintenance. Researchers first implemented a low-calorie diet to produce weight loss, then examined whether protein and glycemic index impacted weight loss maintenance. The study population was made up of nearly 800 overweight adults from European countries who had lost at least 8% of their initial body weight with a low-calorie diet. Participants were then assigned one of 5 diets to prevent weight regain over a 26-week period: a low-protein and low-glycemic index diet, a low-protein and high-glycemic index diet, a high-protein and low-glycemic index diet, a high-protein and high-glycemic index diet, or a control diet. The low-protein high-glycemic index diet was associated with subsequent significant weight regain, and weight regain was less in the groups assigned to a high-protein diet than in those assigned to a low-protein diet, as well as less in the groups assigned to a low-glycemic index diet than in those assigned to a high-glycemic index diet. These results show that a modest increase in protein content and a modest reduction in the glycemic index led to an improvement in maintenance of weight loss. 26. The results from these 3 studies suggest that there may be some benefits to a macronutrient-based dietary approach, but research also shows that while a particular diet may result in weight loss for one person, it may not be effective for another person due to individual differences in genes and lifestyle. For those seeking the perfect one-size-fits-all diet, then, there isn't one. The great news is that everyone can follow the healthy eating plate guidelines and choose healthy, flavorful foods to create a diet that works best for you. Healthy dietary styles. Basket of vegetables including tomatoes, bell peppers, onions, lettuce, mint. While current research comparing diets of differing macronutrient ratios may not point to one perfect diet, there is compelling research about certain dietary styles, including the Mediterranean diet, that offers strong guidance. Curious about quick fixes like diet pills and gastric bypass surgery? Check out our tips for how to reach a winning weight. Low-fat fails. While low-fat was once the diet du jour, subsequent research has shown that low-fat diets are ineffective, and moreover, that eating healthy fats is beneficial for health. In the United States, obesity has become increasingly common even as the percentage of fat in the American diet has declined from 45% in the 1960s to about 33% in the late 1990s. So, cutting fat is not shrinking waistlines. 27, 28. Experimental studies lasting 1 year or longer have not shown a link between dietary fat and weight. 29, 30. In the 8-year Women's Health Initiative dietary modification trial, women assigned to a low-fat diet didn't lose or gain more weight than women eating their usual fare. 31. Low-carbohydrate and Mediterranean diets can be effective. While many diets are fads meant to be followed for short periods of time, research shows that some approaches, including some low-carbohydrate diets and Mediterranean diets, can be good models upon which to base your own dietary strategy as long as they incorporate healthy, high-quality foods. One study comparing a low-carbohydrate, low-fat, and Mediterranean diet followed over 300 people for a 2-year period and found that diets composed of different foods can lead to different weight loss outcomes. Published in the New England Journal of Medicine, this study concluded that Mediterranean and low-carbohydrate diets might be more effective than low-fat diets. The positive effects of the low-carbohydrate diet and the Mediterranean diet upon lipids and glycemic control suggest that individualized dietary interventions, which take personal preferences and metabolic considerations into account, could be effective. 32. A large randomized trial on the effects of a Mediterranean diet on cardiovascular disease showed that among patients at high risk for CVD, a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil or nuts reduced the incidence of major cardiovascular events over 4.8 years of follow-up. 33. This was the first randomized trial that showed reduced cardiac events over a long follow-up period, so it provided strong scientific evidence that the Mediterranean diet is a heart-healthy dietary approach. Though this study focused on cardiovascular outcomes rather than weight loss, it still provides solid evidence that a calorie is not the case, and that instead, food quality is a key contributor to personal health. It also shows that low-fat diets are continuing to lose credibility, and that incorporating healthy fats, such as those included in the Mediterranean diet, can improve heart health and weight loss. What exactly is a Mediterranean diet? There isn't one exact Mediterranean diet, as this eating style takes into account the different foods, eating patterns, and lifestyles in multiple countries that border the Mediterranean Sea. However, there are similarities that define a Mediterranean eating pattern. Conclusion: the best diet incorporates high-quality foods in appropriate portions. There isn't one perfect diet for everyone. Calories matter, but quality is equally important. When making dietary decisions, regardless of whether you choose a certain dietary style such as low-carbohydrate or Mediterranean, you can also use the healthy eating plate as a guide for how to fill your plate. A healthy diet for weight loss also needs to be sustainable, and regardless of what you're eating, you need to make sure you're not eating too many calories overall. Calories do matter, but focus first on choosing high-quality, healthy foods. Diet reviews. Diet book with fork and knife on table. From bookstores to social media to blogs, there's no shortage of information on diet. So how to differentiate what works from an overhyped fad? It's important to remember that even if a particular diet may be successful for one person, it may not be effective for another due to individual differences in genes and lifestyle. And while research shows that calories matter, focusing on food quality is an equally important part of preventing weight gain and promoting weight loss. Diets are also more likely to be successful when they are easier to follow, so tailoring a strategy to suit your own lifestyle is key. Still, when faced with the seemingly endless promotion of weight loss strategies and diet plans, it helps to see what evidence is supporting them. In this series, we take a look at some popular diets and approaches to eating and review the research behind them. Anti-inflammatory diet. An anti-inflammatory diet is promoted as a remedy to battle inflammation in the body. A common belief is that inflammation is always bad. Although it produces unpleasant side effects, inflammation is actually a healthy response by our immune system. Learn more about anti-inflammatory diets, how they work, potential pitfalls, and what the research says. Clean eating. Once just a buzzword, clean eating is now a popular eating style. What it means will depend on who you ask. The terms clean eating and clean diets are not federally regulated in the U.S., so interpretation by consumers and the marketing of clean products by the food industry can vary widely. Learn more about the potential pros and cons of this approach to eating. Diet. The dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet is sometimes prescribed by doctors to help treat high blood pressure. However, numerous studies show wide-ranging health benefits of this eating pattern. Learn more about how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says. Gluten-free for weight loss. A gluten-free diet eliminates all foods containing or contaminated with gluten. As the sole treatment for the 1 to 2% of Americans who have celiac disease, this diet is not new. What is new and driving these sales upward is the use of a gluten-free diet for weight loss. Learn more about a gluten-free diet, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says about this strategy for weight loss. Intermittent fasting for weight loss. Intermittent fasting is a diet regimen that cycles between brief periods of fasting, with either no food or significant calorie reduction, and periods of unrestricted eating. The most common methods are fasting on alternate days, for whole days with a specific frequency per week, or during a set time frame. Learn more about intermittent fasting, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says about this strategy for weight loss. Ketogenic diet for weight loss. The ketogenic or keto diet is a low-carbohydrate, fat-rich eating plan that has been used for centuries to treat specific medical conditions. However, in recent years, this diet has gained considerable attention as a potential weight loss strategy. Learn more about the keto diet, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says about this strategy for weight loss. Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is a primarily plant-based eating plan that includes daily intake of whole grains, olive oil, fruits, vegetables, beans and other legumes, nuts, herbs, and spices. Other foods like animal proteins are eaten in smaller quantities, with the preferred animal protein being fish and seafood. It does not specify portion sizes or specific amounts, as it is up to the individual to decide exactly how much food to eat at each meal. Learn more about the Mediterranean diet, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says. Mind diet. Dementia is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States, driving many people to search for ways to prevent cognitive decline. The Mediterranean diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay, or MIND diet, targets the health of the aging brain. Learn more about the MIND diet, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says. Mindful eating. This approach to eating focuses on the eating experience, body-related sensations, and thoughts and feelings about food, with heightened awareness and without judgment. Attention is paid to the foods being chosen, internal and external physical cues, and your responses to those cues. Learn more about the mindful eating, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the available research says. Paleo diet for weight loss. The Paleolithic or Paleo diet seeks to address 21st century ills by revisiting the way humans ate during the Paleolithic era more than 2 million years ago. Paleo proponents state that because our genetics and anatomy have changed very little since the Stone Age, we should eat foods available during that time to promote good health. Learn more about the Paleo diet, how it works, potential pitfalls, and what the research says about this strategy for weight loss.